Praise the Lord, everybody. I'm Sister Shanaka Davis. I am the leader of the Grace Apostolic Healthcare Professionals Ministry. I am going to be our ministry wanted to start a healthcare forum on different disease processes, different diseases, and some overall things that will help us have a good quality of life. Just before I get started, just to give a brief introduction of myself, I'm currently a licensed practical nurse. I've been in healthcare since I was 16. I started working in the kitchen in a long-term care facility. I then worked as a CNA. I'm currently a practical nurse, and I will be becoming a registered nurse after I graduate in September. My long-term goal is to become a nurse practitioner to specialize in either infectious disease or primary care. The reason why I wanted to go ahead and start this forum is to just give us a little bit of information about things that are going on within healthcare so that we can just be better prepared and we can share it with our community, with our family members. So the first forum that our team wanted to start talking about is life after coronavirus or COVID. We're definitely not out of the woods with COVID, but we have definitely made a great progression in our country, in our world with overcoming coronavirus. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about COVID. I'm pretty sure everybody has heard how COVID-19 came about, but just to give you a little bit of brief introduction about it, some facts, some effects that it's had mentally and physically on our society, some current trends related to COVID, and then life after COVID is this considered the new normal? All right. So coronavirus is, or we all know it's COVID-19. It is an infectious disease or a virus that is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is a family of viruses that originated in Wuhan, China. The first case that was reported in China was around December 2019. This eventually led to a global spread of this virus. I want to believe it reached the United States around January, and the major effects started happening within March with the rises in cases and deaths. This virus led to over 761,402,282 confirmed cases and over 6,887,000 deaths globally. This virus alone has been the single most tragic illness since the Spanish flu in 1918. So there was a global pandemic that happened. So the pandemic that we experienced between 2019 and 2023, that wasn't the first pandemic. The first pandemic was in around 1918, which was the Spanish flu. So I'm just wanted to show a little bit of data from the World Health Organization on how this affected our community, our world. So some current vaccinations and treatments. So when coronavirus first came upon our society, there were no vaccines, there was no treatment. Usually with a lot of viruses, there are not a lot of treatments. Some viruses do have medications that you can take, but a lot of viruses, you just have to wait it out. It does have to run its course through your system, through your immune system. But when COVID first started, there were no vaccines, there were no treatments, there was no medication that could be given, because this was something that, again, this group of viruses, it was new. So the different research companies, pharmaceutical companies, they didn't know how to treat this virus. that in turn caused a lot of deaths, a lot of people getting really sick. But within a year's time, 6 months to a year, they did different pharmaceutical companies, different research companies, research companies, medical scientific research companies. They did develop some treatments. They also developed some vaccines. Vaccines are really important because they are basically taking inactivated or the parts of the virus that are not alive. So they call it inactivated. They've taken them and they are creating they're injecting them into our body to create an immune response. So the vaccines that are available now, there are 3 different categories of vaccines. So the mRNA vaccine are called the messenger RNA vaccine. That vaccine is basically teaching our body how to fight against different viruses. So our body creates DNA, messenger RNA, mRNA or messenger RNA is the protein that teaches our body how to create its own proteins, which in turn help create genetic material within our body. So the mRNA vaccines, they basically are teaching our body how to fight viruses. So those vaccines that were created based on the messenger RNA within our body is called the Pfizer vaccine, the BioNTech vaccine, and then Moderna. So all of these vaccines have 2 doses. You have to get 2 vaccinations. A lot of people, when they first created the vaccines, those were the 2, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, those were the 2 vaccines that were available for consumption, for community consumption. So these are the first 2 that were on the scene. The biotech recently came a little later. It came along with the Novavax, the Johnson & Johnson, Janssen vaccines. The next category of vaccinations is the protein subunit. So with the protein subunit vaccine, that vaccine is basically taking an inactivated part of the COVID virus, and it is being injected, and then our body is going to develop an immune response to it. So the messenger is teaching our body. The protein is taking a piece of the inactivated part of the COVID virus and help teaching our body how to create an immune response to it. And then the last vaccine, or the last vaccine category, which is the viral vector vaccine, that vaccine is teaching our body how to fight the vaccine based on a replica of the COVID virus. So those are the different types of vaccines that have been introduced to our community. Again, the first 3 vaccines, they are 2 doses, 2 initial doses, and then the Novavax and the Johnson & Johnson is 1. The Pfizer and the Moderna are the popular based on the different research results that have been presented. And again, they were the first 2 vaccines that were created. However, all of the vaccines, they are very helpful in creating that immune response within our body to fight the virus. Some current treatments that we have. So the treatment is the antiviral medication. So as I stated, some viruses, your body just has to go through your body just has to go through it. They just have to go through the process. And then some disease processes that are the viruses, they have medications that will help. So some of the medications that were presented were the Paxlovid. That medication was presented. Remdesivir, that's an IV medication, and then Molnupiravir, that also is an oral medication that was created to help with the manifestations of COVID-19. All right, some physical effects of COVID-19. So COVID-19 really had a huge effect on people physically. Some of the physical issues that have occurred, physical issues that have occurred with people that have been diagnosed with COVID are autoimmune conditions. So basically, an autoimmune condition is when your body's immune system is fighting itself. So some conditions from your body, the body fighting itself, have developed. Fatigue after mental and physical activity, shortness of breath, joint pain and muscle pain, rashes, and with women, changes in the menstrual cycle have developed from COVID-19, after COVID. So the body will have manifestations. So those occur, signaling, your body is telling you, hey, I'm not feeling well, something's going on. But these manifestations, they've occurred in individuals after they've developed the virus, and they've gotten better. The virus has left their body, but they're still having those effects from the virus. All right, some more effects from COVID-19 are some respiratory or cardiac symptoms, such as chest pain, coughing, shortness of breath, some digestive symptoms, such as diarrhea or stomach pain. I will say, currently, I am doing some clinicals. I'm shadowing different nurses while I'm currently in school. And some of the hospital units that I worked on, some of the patients that have been diagnosed with COVID and they've gotten over it, a lot of those patients, they are in the hospital and they're still fighting different issues stemming from COVID. A lot of those issues are the respiratory, the lungs not being strong enough to exchange oxygen. So they're causing that shortness of breath, causing that coughing, causing that chest pain. I've seen patients that came in the hospital, they didn't have any previous medical history before they got COVID. But then after, because the virus has been so hard on the body, they've developed heart failure. They've developed other manifestations stemming from COVID. So COVID, it not only affected the body, the respiratory, like the breathing, but it also affected the body in different areas. And again, some of those manifestations that people experienced before COVID, they're experiencing even now. And COVID, again, it started in 2019, 2020, and it's 2023. And some of them are still feeling those effects of COVID. Some mental effects of COVID are neurological, or the brain. It's difficulty concentrating, headaches, sleeping problems, dizziness, feeling the pain and needle in your fingers or your toes, and that's called neuropathy. And some people are still experiencing that change or that loss of taste and smell. One of the hallmark signs of COVID was a loss of taste and smell. So some people are still having those effects, those lasting effects of COVID that affected the neurological system. So one thing I do want to touch on is, again, some patients that developed COVID, they may not have had any medical issues, but for some reason, COVID allowed the body to allow those different diseases like diagnoses like diabetes, heart failure, those type of disorders to develop. So it's kind of like maybe some of those disorders were dormant in the body, but because of COVID, because patients developed COVID and their body was so unimmune to it, it allowed those different diagnoses to develop. All right, so not only did COVID leave lasting effects on individuals that contracted COVID, but it also affected the mental, but it left a mental effect on our society. So there was a 25% increase of anxiety and depression within the United States. Mental health declines due to loss of jobs and unable to communicate with loved ones. The fear of the unknown, the increased news coverage, and increased deaths definitely took a mental toll on our community. Being stuck in the house, being in quarantine 24 hours a day for months on end, a lot of people that were used to, our society used to getting up, going out to our jobs, going to school, just being out, going out with your family to different restaurants, just spending time outside of the house, that was, it wasn't a gradual stop, it was an abrupt stop. So because of that, being confined into one space, for months on end, that definitely left a lasting mental effect on people. That was a negative mental effect on people. The fear of the unknown, not knowing, if you go visit your family, if you're going to come back and have COVID, because with COVID, it's an airborne virus. So it travels. You can't see COVID. You can't see COVID in people. A lot of people didn't have any symptoms. They had no manifestations of this virus, but they had it. And then, they could have passed it, and not purposely, because they may not have known they had it, but they could have passed it to loved ones. And then those loved ones developed those manifestations, and it could have led to illness, during the time or after. So the fear of the unknown, not knowing if you have the virus, not knowing if you're transmitting the virus, not knowing if you go somewhere, will you contract the virus? During that time, the news was 24/7 COVID, with our administration, and then the concerns that our society had about the lack of response, just not knowing how things would change from day to day. And then the different biases from different news organizations, that definitely left a lot of anxiety and depression. It left a lot of that effect on people. And then the increased deaths, that occurred because a lot of people, they were going to the hospital, there was a shortage in ventilators. So a ventilator is a machine that will help a person breathe if they're not able to breathe on their own. So not having enough of those machines. And then, I've heard different stories from where doctors were saying they had to choose, which patient is a better candidate for the machine, because, they just didn't have enough resources to help the patients. So, not only did, our society that was, not in the healthcare field experience, those negative mental effects, a lot of healthcare providers working in the hospital, making these hard decisions, and then, coming home, not knowing if they have the virus and they're spreading it to their family. It left a lot of, individuals, dealing with the virus, the mental effects. I know me personally, I'm grateful to God that when COVID was really bad, I wasn't working in the hospital. However, I was working with a very sensitive population that, very sensitive because they were immunocompromised, meaning that their immune system was not strong to fight this virus. So just working with them, and the emotional toll that it had on them, being concerned about the virus, and then myself, going in and out of my office and our coworkers, it definitely did take a toll on me personally. but thank God that I was able to overcome it, but we definitely have a lot of people that are still dealing with those effects from COVID, mental effects from COVID. So COVID and children. So kind of staying on that line of the mental effects of it. COVID definitely had a huge negative effect on our children. So according to the CDC, a majority of respondents within a 94% of a group of 345 respondents, they indicated that the COVID-19 pandemic highly impacted early identification of developmental disabilities in young children from birth to age 5. So the brains are built to talk, touch, sight, sound, and experience. So the first 5 years of a child's development is extremely important because it's all about stimulation. So, through relationships, through touching things, through seeing things, through experiencing different things, being out around in different areas, those stimulations, that's what's responsible for helping with developmental growth within a child. There's something that we learn in in nursing, and it's with different psychologists. And it's one of the college psychologists is Piaget, and one of them is Erickson, and they talk about different stages that we go through within our lives. And the first few stages of development, it's heavy on stimulation, having those interactions, children having those interactions with other children, with other adults, with their families. So when you think about how COVID affected our children, and you think about how, different models of development have been introduced, and then you compare them to how COVID was, you will see that, okay, you will see, okay, maybe it could cause a little bit of developmental delay in our children. The children not being able to hug their family, children in masks. Our children were not in school for a year. They were doing virtual learning. So not having that in-person experience definitely had a huge effect on the developing of our children mentally and physically. I was doing a clinical, and a clinical is just basically shadowing in different healthcare settings. And I got the opportunity to work in a daycare for my pediatric rotation. And, one thing that the teachers let us know, that COVID had a huge effect on their students, because, the teachers have to wear the mask. They have to wear masks. But, before they were even wearing masks, they didn't interact with the children because they weren't able to come to the facility because of COVID. But when they got into the facility, the teachers have to wear masks. So, when children see people talk, that's one form of stimulation. So, not being able to see the teachers talk, not being able to touch the children, not being able to have that physical communication with the children definitely created a delay, and it did cause some emotional delay. And so they definitely let us know how it changed the trajectory of how children's, mentally are developing in those early years. Some of the, one of the teachers was letting me know how, one of her students before the year before COVID, how he was excelling. And then when he came back, she could see a lot of the delay emotionally, and, with that interaction, and within his, when they're doing their learning projects and things, she saw the change, and she saw that how it slowed down, because of that lack of that interaction. So it definitely impacted our children. So I just wanted to just show you different parts of the brain, and different parts of the brain and what they're responsible for when it comes to your thinking, your sensory, speech, just how the body operates, so the motor area, voluntary muscle, but just focusing on how COVID affected our children. This is the Broca's area that's for speech control. So if children are not having that constant communication, now I'm not saying that they're not having communication at home, but when it comes to the educational setting, not having that constant communication because they're, silenced on Zoom, they're not able to really, function in the classroom, because that intimacy, being in person with the teacher, that has been taken away due to this virus, so having that extra, that additional opportunity to learn, to grow, to develop mentally, that extra opportunity was put on hold because of COVID. So if you see the frontal lobe, a couple of those topics, they're related to problem solving, concentrating, thinking, behavior, personality, and mood. So if, the child within the school setting, if they're not able to, have that additional assistance with developing those different parts of the brain, that it is going to be a delay. So I just wanted to point that out on how the brain functions. And, if the brain is not being stimulated, it will cause a delay. Even with adults, if we're not consistently stimulating our brain, some of those senses can be slowed down a little bit. So, that's just something that I definitely wanted to point out when we talk about development. And again, I just want to state, this is related to children being in school. This is not, being in a home outside of school, with the family. This is I'm just basically pointing these things, these observations, and these things that I learned, just based on the difference that occurred with children in the school setting. So I just wanted to give you a disclaimer on that. All right, so we're going to move on to the current trends in COVID. So again, as I stated, COVID is not gone. It's here to stay. The COVID virus has mutated several times. One of the mutations is called the Omicron. That was here for the longest time, and that definitely caused a lot of issues. But currently, and the Omicron has mutated into several viruses. One of the current mutations of the COVID virus is the XBB 1.5. And as of April the 3rd, 87% of COVID cases have arisen due to the XBB 1.5 mutation of COVID. So although COVID variants are, there are a lot of different variants, but we still can't let our guard down. And excuse me for the typo, I meant to say April 5th, but as of April 5th, There have been over 5,673 admissions in the hospital within the United States due to COVID, and over 135,481 positive cases. So as we can see, COVID is still here. People are still being infected, and, we still have to make sure that we're being safe. Although the trend is going down, different researchers, they're wondering if COVID is kind of like the flu, where in different times of the year, the flu, you have your flu season between September to April, so they're wondering if this is kind of similar to the flu, where is it the trends increase over different periods. However, it's still a lot of cases and a lot of hospital admissions to rule out that COVID has a COVID season. I think COVID is just year round, whereas with the flu, you see the highest prevalence is during those late fall, winter, early spring months. So vaccinations have helped decrease the spread of COVID along with wearing masks. So that is called a herd immunity. So a herd immunity is basically when a group of people, they're getting vaccinated, because the more people that get vaccinated, the less risk that will occur that people will develop the virus. So that's why when the vaccinations first came out, and the government, everybody was, advocating for people to get the virus, is because of that herd immunity. So again, the herd immunity occurs when a large group of people, they get a vaccination. When you get that vaccination, you're decreasing the risk of spreading the coronavirus, or spreading any virus that has a vaccine. So the more people that get vaccinated, the smaller, the lesser risk of people developing that virus. I will say that even though people are vaccinated, you can still develop coronavirus, or any virus, but having a vaccination will help decrease those manifestations that lead to more serious illness, or even death. So that's why it's really important, that you consider. I don't want to tell anybody you need to get vaccinated. I would advocate for it, but definitely do your own research, and vaccination is really important, so that we can decrease the spread of this virus or any other virus. So 55,261,916 people have been, according to the CDC, have been vaccinated in the United States. All right, so is COVID the new normal? So although the pandemic has been declared that it is ended, COVID is still around. It is here to stay. Unfortunately, it is here to stay, because, although we do have what's called, again, the herd immunity, a lot of people are still not vaccinated, due to personal preferences, personal beliefs. A lot of people are still not vaccinated, so COVID is still here. Our President Biden, he did declare that the pandemic has ended. However, COVID is still here. So we still need to be mindful that this is a very serious virus, and we need to make sure that we're doing what's necessary to remain safe from COVID. So again, it's very serious, just because we don't hear about the hospital cases, just because we don't hear about how many people have gotten COVID, doesn't mean that we take it lightly. We still have to be mindful that this virus is very serious. It can be very detrimental to our personal health, our family's health, and our society. So some COVID safe practices. Make sure you wash your hands. Washing your hands is the first step to fighting any illnesses. Wash your hands when you touch indoors, before you eat your food, if you sneeze, anything that you're doing, you make sure you wash your hands. Washing your hands will help prevent spread of infection. So please, please wash your hands. Wash your hands with soap and warm water. If you sing the alphabet song, then that is the amount of time that has helped get your hands clean. So please, please, please wash your hands. If you use hand sanitizer, that's okay. But if you use it after the third time you use it, like, so say if you're doing something and you're, and you're hand sanitizing, you're doing something, you hand sanitize again within that same period of time. You're doing something, you hand sanitizing it. After that third time, you should be going to the sink and washing your hands. I know in healthcare, they tell us use the hand sanitizer, but you need to be making sure you wash your hands. So please, please, please wash your hands. If you are sick, stay home. It's very important because not only are you exposing someone else to being ill, you're also exposing yourself, because when you're sick, your immune system is weak. So if you are sick, please stay at home. I know, we're wearing masks now, and, we feel that if we have our mask, if we're coughing, we can still go out. But no, if you are sick, please stay home. Protect yourself, protect your family, and just be mindful of our community. Please, 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 if you're sick, stay home. So wearing your mask in public. So a lot of places, they have been really relaxed on masks. Masks are optional. So, if you don't feel comfortable, not wearing your mask, please, please, please put your mask on. I know I wear my mask when I'm going out. Sometimes I don't, but majority of the time I am wearing my mask. So make sure you're wearing your mask in public if you're not comfortable being out. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. If you have your own personal beliefs about vaccination, if you don't feel comfortable, that's perfectly understandable. I don't want to force anybody to get vaccinated. I don't want to press my personal medical beliefs on anybody. But if you don't have, any reservations in vaccinating, and you just don't want to do it just because you don't want to do it, please, please, please get vaccinated. Again, when you're getting vaccinated, because a huge myth is that when you're getting vaccinated, you're getting the virus. You're getting that live virus. You're not getting the live virus. The virus is inactivated. And again, you have those different types of vaccines. Some of them is a replica. Some of it is a piece of the inactivated protein. And then one of the vaccines is teaching your body how to fight against viruses. So please, please, please make sure you get vaccinated. Make sure you're getting your booster. So definitely please vaccinate. If you have any immunocompromised disorders, or immunocompromised, meaning that your immune system is weak, or if you have autoimmune, and again, the definition of autoimmune is your body is fighting against itself, definitely you should be getting vaccinated. And I'm pretty sure your primary care provider is telling you, get your vaccine, get your COVID vaccine, get your COVID booster, and any other vaccines. Make sure that you're getting vaccinated so that you can decrease that risk of developing the COVID virus or any other virus, and that you're developing that you're being a part of that herd immunity, meaning that you are contributing to decreasing the spread of COVID or any other virus, because you are a part of that group of people, a part of the group of the 55 million people that have gotten vaccinated. So make sure you establish a primary care provider. The reason why I added this into the presentation is because having a primary care provider is extremely important. So your primary care provider is basically, overseeing your overall health and well-being. As I stated earlier in the presentation, a lot of individuals that develop COVID, they before they had COVID, they had no symptoms, no signs of having any illnesses, such as diabetes, such as heart disease, hypertension, lung disorders. But after they developed COVID, for some reason, either the diagnosis was dormant, or because their body was the immune system was weak, or whatever the case may be, they developed those diagnoses, those disorders. So make sure you're seeing a primary care provider that can help you oversee your overall health and well-being. You're getting your checkup, you're getting your blood pressure checks. Make sure you're getting vaccinated. And anytime when you don't feel good, you can go to your primary care provider. They'll be able to direct you on what you need to do. So definitely make sure you're seeing a primary care provider. And the good thing about the primary care provider is you're only seeing them a couple of times a year, unless you have a diagnosis that, requires you to see them every 3 months or every 4 months. A lot of individuals are only seeing their primary care provider a couple of times a year. So make sure, you go ahead and find a primary care provider. If you need any assistance in your location, you can definitely reach out to me. I can be able to kind of direct you into where you should go based on your location. We have some of our church family lives in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I'm more familiar with Virginia. However, I can do my best to help you find a good primary care provider. Last but not least, take your medications as prescribed. If you're on medication, if you're on blood pressure medication, if you're on medication for diabetes, if you're on medication for any other disease process diagnosis, please take your medication as prescribed. When you're not taking your medication, your body is not developing that strength within that system to keep you safe. And say, for example, if you don't take your medication as prescribed, you have hypertension or high blood pressure, you're not taking your blood pressure medication as prescribed. So your blood pressure is constantly high. You are creating a space for yourself to develop COVID or any other sickness or illness, because that part of your body is not being maintained as it should. So make sure you're taking your medications as prescribed, because you don't want to not take your medication and then you start not feeling well, and that overall health and well-being that we are praying that our community has, that decreases because you're not taking your medication. And then you open yourself up to develop, to contract COVID. Because your immune system is not strong. Our body works together. If your immune system is weak, then you're opening yourself up for infection. So make sure you're taking your medications as prescribed. All right, last but not least, here are some of the references that I used. Along with my personal experience, I did get some information from the World Health Organization, the CDC, different reputable news outlets, and different state organizations. So I just want to say thank you so much for attending our first healthcare forum. Again, this is life after COVID. However, we still have COVID. It's still here. However, my prayer is that I've given you some good information that, will give you a little bit more insight about the virus, how it's affected us and how to overcome it. Please feel free to share this information. Thank you for your time, and I pray that you have a blessed day. Thank you.